Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Review podcast, our monthly chat about a wide range of films, new or old, popular or obscure, focusing largely but not exclusively on physical media, much like the site itself. So as usual on the show, we're going to talk about discs we're looking forward to, and we're going to review some titles that we've watched from our collections or elsewhere. But I'm going to stick with it. I've really enjoyed the last few episodes where we've kind of given the show a theme to keep everything more focused. And I'm randomly picking them out of the air usually. Although, well, no, when it was November, I went with noir because it's kind of Noir-November or whatever. But yeah, I've just gone for classic westerns for this one. Because I love a good western, so we're going to keep. I say classic western, so we're having a kind of a 60s cut off, and we're gonna. But I'm not going to include the spaghetti westerns which came at the tail end of the 60s. I'm going to go more classic style westerns. So yeah, we're going to have a little chat about that. But before we get into it. Let's introduce ourselves. So I am David Brooke, Blueprint Reviews editor, and with me today are my faithful pair of a kind of a themed podcast guests and also Blueprint Review writers Andy Goulding and John Meakin. So yeah, pleasure to have you both on the show again.
Pleasure to be back.
Hello.
Excellent. Did you record as your deputies?
Deputies, yeah, no, definitely. I know.
Three amigos.
Absolutely. Well, before we mosey on down to the watering hole or whatever, I don't know.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I can't carry this on that much longer. No, but before we get into our theme, let's just have a little look at what discs we're excited about, just to bring it back to the Blueprint Reviews kind of bread and butter. There's a lot of good stuff coming out. I'm going to have one big glut as just one item, though, and that's Imprint. Imprint have just announced like the craziest lineup for, I think it's for September or August. Just loads of box sets. They had 2 Hitchcock sets, like one with these really early films, like some of his first films, it looks quite similar to the one that came out in the UK. But then they've got another one, which is it's got like the 39 Steps, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, I should have written down what was in there. But there's a lot of the good ones from that early-ish era. Some really cracking films in there. So that one I'm really looking forward to. They've also got the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, season 1 of his TV show that he produced. But then they've also got a Powell and Pressburger set with loads of their earlier films, and really, again, some fantastic films in there. And they've also got The Keep coming out, which obviously has been long unavailable in the UK. So yeah, that's very exciting. I've got my name down for most of those. If they all come, I don't know how on earth I'm going to cover them all. I'm just presuming I'll get one or none. So we'll see what happens. I might have to share the wealth a little bit if they do all come. So yeah, that's exciting. And then also another couple I want to mention. Radiance have got another World Noir set, World Noir Volume 4. I really enjoyed Volume 3, so I'm keen to dig into this one. I still haven't got around to watching the first 2. But yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Next, Criterion have got 2 films by Edward Yang. Edward Yang, I've only seen 2 of his films before, but they are both absolutely incredible, and that is Yi Yi and A Brighter Summer Day. They're both absolutely stunning films, so I've been very keen to see more of his work, but it's not really available very easily in the UK, so I was very, very happy to see these. The titles in the set are Confusion, a brilliant title, and Mahjong. So yeah, looking forward to that. And finally, 88 films on the other end of the spectrum, away from the classier sort of films. We've got The Cat, which is directed by Lam Nai Choi. He's the guy who made The Seventh Curse and Riccio, The Story of Ricky, 2 of the most widely enjoyable and bonkers films I've ever seen. And this supposedly is supposed to be even more bonkers. The description online said, an evil blob-like extraterrestrial has come to Earth with nefarious intentions. Luckily, some good aliens are on its trail, a man, a woman, and of course, their fluffy black cat. So, it's supposed to be a lot of fun, so I'm very much looking forward to that one. But yeah, how about you guys? John, what have you got on your wish list for the next couple of months?
I'm really looking forward to that Rack and Ruin set that's coming up.
Yes.
Films from the Rubble. because I've always liked that angle in British film. Ealing had a couple from that era. But to see the kind of German, I think it would be really, really interesting, and they look really good. So I'm looking forward to that set.
Mm.
Excited for seeing Maguire Wrath of God coming up,
Nice.
Oh, nice.
because that's always, bit of Werner Herzog. You need a run up before you tackle his films, but I'm looking forward to seeing that one again. And what else? Oh, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is coming up,
Oh, of course, yeah.
which the first two, Arrow have done a phenomenal job on those releases.
Nice.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've done with that one. What's coming up immediately? Human Traffic,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got, and I don't. It's awful. It's just awful. It really is. I thought it passed me by when it first came out, and I thought, have I missed out on a kind of sub train spotting gem? I really, really haven't missed out on that film at all. So
I must,
yeah, well,
yeah, I can remember seeing it back in the day, and I don't know, it was kind of when it came out when I was a student, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of fun, but it is just basically watching a bunch of kind of early 20s, late teens, or whatever, guys just going out and getting wasted. That's pretty much just it. It's like, oh, yeah,
it is funny seeing Danny Dyer in it, being
yeah,
very, very young and being exactly like Danny Dyer has always been. And it's funny because I've never really liked his stuff. I've never liked
no,
his Cockney
shit.
shtick. But recently he did Rivals, which the missus is really into, and he's so good in Rivals. It's unbelievable. And then I watch him in Human Traffic, and I'm right back to square one.
All
You know. So yeah, that's kind of casting a shadow at the moment. But there's a lot of other good stuff coming out. Andy, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I've got a couple for this month. I think this might be out tomorrow. Actually, a couple of Criterion releases. There's the Criterion of Hard Day's Night.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a copy of it, but this looks like a really beautiful set, and I always love to get the Criterion ones when I have a bit of spare cash. And the other Criterion release is one I think David reviewed. It's Midnight,
Oh, yeah.
which is the Mitchell Leeson film from a Billy Wilder script, which is a film that Mitchell Leeson has so many of these great hidden classic sort of screwball comedies, a lot of them written by Preston Sturges and Billy Wilder before they took up the director chair themselves, so that they're well worth seeking out. And then in August, there's a couple of Peter Sellers comedies coming out from Studio Canal Vintage Classics. It's a two-way stretch and Heavens Above, which I really like. So I'm looking forward to them. BFI are releasing Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, which I really love. Again, another one that you reviewed, David, and kind of in line with what we're talking about today, is Arrow releasing The Shootist.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's a bit outside our remit for what we're talking today because it's a 70s one, but yeah, I've always really enjoyed that film. Paramount are releasing a Sunset Boulevard 75th anniversary edition.
Yes, I saw that one.
Really
Yeah.
terrific. And then the last one's a bit of a quirky choice, but it's something that I've been waiting for quite a while. Fabulous Films are releasing the complete two series of Jim Henson's The Storyteller,
Oh,
which was a
really?
series
Oh,
I used to love
nice.
watching when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
Oh,
And I've been waiting for a good edition of that to come out, so that's heading our way in August.
nice. I need to get that on my wish list. Yeah, I used to love that show as well.
Yeah.
I've been like keeping an eye out to pick up the DVD set, but if there's a Blu-ray coming out, yeah, I'll hold out.
You're going to flip and take that to review now, aren't you?
Oh, they don't bring it. I don't think they usually send us things to review. So yeah,
No.
we're safe.
Hopefully all those
I think
imprint ones are all
I
right.
must have just missed Storyteller. I'd not heard of it.
Oh, it's a real cult one. But if you like any of Jim Henson's stuff, then it's like one of the big ones that fans absolutely love.
Yeah, I was just the right age for it. Well, I'm very similar age to you, Andy. So it's
Yeah.
yeah. I watched it a lot when it came out. Excellent. Cool, excellent. Yeah, lots to look forward to as always. So, yeah, let's get straight in and dig dig in to our genre. So westerns, yeah, I mean the western, it's a real key genre. Really. It's been around since the silent era. I mean, in fact, actually, I mean the very first feature film ever made. It's Australian, so not quite a western, but it's kind of an Australian western, I guess. Like it's got a bit of a flavour of it. Made in 1906. And then you've got Western shorts from way back in like 1903 is the first like American Western. So right way back in the start of cinema itself, they're making them. And although it kind of has waves of success, as a genre it kind of goes quiet for a while, and it's not as popular as it was. But it never dies. Like there's always a few trickling out here and there, and you will get these waves of popularity. Well, suddenly there'll be quite a few of them coming out again. I can remember in the 90s we got like Wyatt Earp and Tombstone coming out at a similar time, and then you had Unforgiven, and you had quite some really good ones in the 90s, which we might get to another point. But we're going to talk about that classic period, but before New Hollywood, I guess. Really, just looking back at the classic westerns. So I guess at first I could ask you guys kind of what draws you to the westerns. I'll ask you this first: whether it's a genre you love. I guess because you decided to be on the show, I'm hoping you do enjoy a good western.
Hate him. Absolutely hate him. No, I'm joking. I've always seen westerns as it's like the most core genre of cinema, at least for Hollywood. And it is kind of, it's everything else. Almost everything else can be represented in theatre, in all sorts of other ways of storytelling. But the only way you're going to get a really good western is you go out to Arizona and do it properly in Monument Valley. And it's only cinema that can do that. And then, of course, it's all wrapped up in the themes and the history of America. And you can see America filmmakers wrestling with themselves and their own history as you go through the genre. And even early on, John Ford had a grasp of the contradictions, but then even later on, there was still a lot of racism, there was a lot of violence, and it all sort of it just represents the real heart of America, I think.
Absolutely.
And I've always been drawn to westerns anyway, because growing up, it's like bank holiday weekends. It was Bond and John Wayne westerns.
Yeah.
They were just all over the place, and my mum and dad loved them. So ended up seeing a lot of John Wayne stuff when I was a kid. So long before I got into film properly, it was kind of like looking back and realizing I already kind of had a feel for the good stuff and the not so good stuff, and whether that even mattered, because they were all just such great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's tied up with my dad's love of westerns. I lost my dad in 2020, and since then, it's been like watching westerns is almost like a sort of a way to still spend time with him, because I feel like, oh, Dad would have loved this, or I often think Dad probably would have seen this, because he absolutely loved westerns. I think he introduced me to it. I think the first ever like proper film western I saw, discounting Back to the Future 3, was probably High Noon, and it was my dad impulse bought it on VHS when he was doing the grocery shopping one weekend, and got me to watch it with him. And I was sort of familiar with the kind of Western iconography just from like having watched cartoons. They did westerns and cartoons all the time. Bugs Bunny Rides Again and Drip Along Daffy and the Shooting of Dan Magoo. They're three like really good Western cartoons that I can think of. And also there was like just in TV things came up. I can remember there was a particular episode of the A-Team called A Nice Place to Visit, and it has a kind of Western style to it, and it's about they go to a town for the funeral of one of their friends, and they find that it's being the people of town are being terrorized by this bullying family who sort of hold court there, and so the A team drive them out of town basically. And it's that sort of story that I can watch again and again and again. There's so many westerns like that, and I just love those ones. So yeah, it's sort of deep rooted in my childhood through like a way to reach back into my dad's history. My mum absolutely hated them. My dad loved them, and they used to go to the cinema. And there's those days when you watched what was there at the cinema.
Yeah.
So often it was westerns, and my dad loved it. My mum couldn't stand them.
Cool. Yeah, I guess for me, for me, it was less of a family thing. My dad was never not that I knew of like a massive Western fan. I think he'd watch them occasionally, but I think I came to them not that late on. I came to them more when I was I guess in my early teens. Like me and my brother and Jim, like a good friend of both of ours, we kind of got into films at the similar sort of time in the kind of mid 90s, I guess it was. And at that time, I started to kind of, I was reading Empire magazine and all this kind of stuff, and I loved lists. I'd always look out for like the best 100 films ever made, and I'd try and tick off some of the the canon kind of classics, and The Searchers is the first one I kind of remember watching, and that kind of, and I thought it was fantastic, and that sucked me in. But then I started to watch more of them. But also I did have it was more in terms of the family. My mum's American, and so half of my family's over there. And I do know my granddad was a big Western fan, or at least my mum always told me that in her memory, his favorite film was Shane. That's another one that I tracked down, and again, it's another favorite of mine. We'll get to our lists later, I guess. And I kind of, and I always because my family were in the States, I didn't get to see them as often. Like we would go quite a lot, to be fair. But when I say quite a lot, it's like every other year. So every like 2 years, I'd get to go and see them. And my granddad was quite he reminded me of a Western figure in the kind of Clint Eastwood sense, in that he didn't say a lot. He would kind of keep quiet, but when he spoke, people would pay attention. Like you'd kind of turn and listen. He had quite a sonorous kind of voice. He was a big guy, like tall guy, not like And so he had a kind of a Western vibe to him. So I don't know. When I think of Westerns, it does remind me of my granddad, weirdly. And so there's a bit of a personal thing there, I guess. But I think it was more a genre in terms of my film watching habits. It's a genre that I just kind of gradually burrowed through. I think, as I say, in my early days, I was a bit boring. I was just like, top 100 lists, blah blah blah. So I would watch. I'd watch some of the real big obvious ones. But then it was more, I say recently, but time just goes so quickly. It's probably like 15 years ago. but I started to broaden my horizons a bit more and dig a little deeper, and that's when I kind of realized actually I really like Westerns a lot, and I started to explore a little further, and it's one of my favorite genres, really, alongside kind of martial arts movies and film noir. Really, I just can't get enough of them. I think for me, we've mentioned already kind of the landscapes. I am a sucker for a dramatic landscape, and Westerns are full of them. I do love that kind of scenery. But also I kind of like, what is quite nice about Westerns is they often have quite, on the surface, very simple story. They recycle similar kind of setups a lot. But I don't see that as a problem. I think what the best Westerns do is they take this simple premise and use it to open up quite some really interesting psychological dramas. Or even if they don't do that, I think the fact that they've got quite they can have quite generic stories. It means instead it can focus on just the way it's told through cinematic means, or through just really strong performances, or through the impressive visuals of the scenery. It's so it's not bogged down in trying to make a really exciting and really interesting plot. It instead can focus on the characters or the craftsmanship. And I think that's another reason why I like some of the other genres that tend to be generic, I guess. And so yeah, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's yeah. So I've always been there really. For the last kind of 20 years or something, I just fallen in love with the genre.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about film noir, and I said then about how there seemed to be an inexhaustive supply
Mm.
of good ones, little gems that you can find, and that is certainly true of the Western.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
so many of them
Mhm.
out there. And
Yeah.
I was looking at I got a list up of the sort of the most famous Hollywood directors,
Mm.
uh, and just sort of cross-reference it to see how many of them didn't make westerns, and it's very few of them. Most of them have got a western in their filmography. It's only like the only ones I could find that Orson Welles didn't direct any westerns, but he starred in three.
Yeah.
Frank Capra didn't.
No.
Billy Wilder didn't. But then Stanley Kubrick didn't. But then there's a lot of it are just like outsiders, like non-Americans, like Hitchcock and James Whale and people like that. And most of the rest of them, even people you wouldn't know, I started making this list of people who you might not have expected to have directed a western who did. So Douglas Sirk, King of the Melodrama, he made two. Preston Sturges made one. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, George Cukor made one. Fritz Lang made three. Leo McCarey, Todd Browning made a couple. Elia Kazan, Joseph L. Mankiewicz made one. Robert Wise made a few. Stanley Kramer made one. Otto Preminger, Blake Edwards, Gene Kelly, and even Sergei Eisenstein made one.
Really? Wow.
Or he made one. It was an unfinished one that sort of got in the 70s. Eventually, they made a sort of restoration from the bits and pieces that they could find. It's supposed to be like his sort of lost masterpiece.
Speaking of lists, I guess we could kind of talk a little bit about some of our favourites. I don't know. It's yeah. Should we dig into our favourites, or do you want to talk about some key figures first? I guess.
Yeah,
we talk about a few key figures. I mean, the obvious one.
I think the two can go together.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll definitely be linked. So I'll kick things off then. I've already mentioned The Searchers, and that has to be on my list. As I say, this is the film that kind of my first western that at least the first western I remember that had a real impact is definitely The Searchers. I haven't seen it for a long time actually, but I'd watched it a lot because it was back when I was my early days of my collection, and I got it on VHS. So because it was early days, I didn't have thousands to get through, so I could rewatch things again and again. And yeah, it's just a stunning piece of work, really. And the other one has been mentioned already by Andy briefly is High Noon. Yeah, another. I mean, these are obvious choices, these two, but they're so good. It's hard to kind of it'd just be wrong not to have them on the list, really. And then I'm going to group quite a few together, but the Bud Bettiker and Randolph Scott westerns, all of them are so good.
Yeah, they really are.
I think my favourite, at least going by, as I say, the problem I have with them is, well, I don't really, not that I have a problem with the films, but I watched a lot of them all in one block because I reviewed the box set that Indicator did a while ago. And so I'm kind of just looking at my review to double check which my favourite was. But actually, I think the one I'd lean towards was Ride Lonesome. It was kind of the all-rounder for me. I just loved it. I mean, I loved all of them, but this, I don't know, the storytelling is fantastic. It's very tense, exciting, well-rounded characters. So I do enjoy that one a great deal. And then Shane, I've already mentioned that. I'm probably going to steal all the kind of obvious ones, I'm afraid, guys, but we'll see.
I'm going to take them right back again.
Yeah, and then Stagecoach. I rewatched that. Okay, it was probably a few years ago now, but I watched it for a podcast, and oh god, it just sails along that film. It's so much fun. It's really tight. And yeah. And The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. That's one I came to a bit later on. I've only seen it once. But it blew me away. I thought it was fantastic. So yeah, I've got a lot of Ford in here. And then Rio Bravo, which is a lot of fun, a bit more of a siege, almost like a siege film as well as a western. And then I've got
it is, however, and I was going to touch on this. But I always liked the story behind Rio Bravo,
Yeah.
in that it was a response to High Noon.
Yeah,
The High Noon was so political, and John Wayne was especially so angered by it that they made Rio Bravo as a kind of response. And I've always thought, if you prefer Rio Bravo, does that mean you prefer John Wayne's politics? And I don't like to dig into that too far, you know. And the only I really love Rio Bravo.
it's a
The
so
only,
fantastic.
much
the
fun.
only, I think the only thing that spoils it is they remade it, what, 3 times?
Yeah,
I
El
think they
Dorado
did
was one of them.
El Dorado and Rio Lobo, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah, it's basically the same. But yeah, it's I always found that an interesting thing when you look back at the history of Hollywood and where it all ties in, especially around the 50s. There was this little battle going on, kind of thing, and all these years later, we were left with two genuinely brilliant films.
yeah, it just shows you, doesn't it? You did like you can put the politics aside to an extent, and because I love both of those films as well, so it does you don't have to align with the politics that were behind them
No,
to
absolutely.
necessarily enjoy them.
Absolutely. I think, as I say, I think Rio Bravo is just enjoyable enough for the kind of interaction between the characters.
Yeah,
It's all about the characters, that one, really, because it's got a chamber piece. But yeah, so
Yeah,
much fun. And I guess speaking of politics, another one on my list is the Oxbow incident.
oh,
Um,
that's a beautiful film. Yeah,
it's really
mm,
powerful, moving. Again, takes quite a different approach to a lot of the other films on the list. And then Winchester is sorry, I was just gonna I was gonna group some together, and the Anthony Mann, Jimmy Stewart westerns, they're very good. But I think my favorite out of the bunch is probably Winchester 73. I love the kind of gimmick of following the gun around. I think
yeah.
is very effective. And it helps that it's the first of their films that I saw, so it just absolutely again just blew me away. So
I was trying to remember of Anthony Mann's films with James Stewart. There's one where I always thought as a Western actor, James Stewart was fine, but he didn't really stand out for me like some of the others do. Much as I enjoy all of the westerns that he did, but I think is it called round the bend or bend of the river?
Bend of
Sorry,
the River. Yeah,
is that the one with where James Stewart goes just a little bit nuts? There's one where he never really played the villain, but he comes close to being the antagonist. I can't remember if it was that one or
I
another one.
get a couple of them mixed up, to be honest, but
yeah,
I think in all of the Anthony Mann ones, though, he does have quite a dark edge.
yeah.
In
He's
all of them,
very
Yes.
really,
gothic in them, isn't he?
but maybe not as
I
far as being the villain.
I should jump in here probably and say that Anthony Mann's films they're my favourite westerns. So I should be able to answer John's question, and embarrassingly enough, I can't. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the Naked Spur is my favourite western.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
that's fantastic. I think out of the five with Jimmy Stewart that he made, only the Far Country I think is good, but I think Winchester 73, Bend of the River, the Naked Spur, and the Man from Laramie are
Yeah,
all
so good.
fantastic. And
Yeah.
then he made several others as well, and he made two other absolutely belting ones. The Tin Star, I think, is a great film, and Man of the West is just amazing.
Well, that was on my. I've kind of got an underrated list. Although I'm not that that's necessarily underrated, but I think it's not quite as famous as the others I've got on my
It's
list.
because it's
Probably.
not a Jimmy Stewart one, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
exactly. But Man of the West, that is stunning film. I love that. And also, if we jump back to Jimmy Stewart for a minute, the other one I wanted to mention was Destiny Rides Again, which
yeah,
I watched for the first
Yeah.
time very recently, and it was so much fun. I love that film. And finally, I just want to have a shout out. Another underrated one is Day of the Outlaw. You could call it a revisionist western, I guess. I was going to try and avoid these, but it's so hard to judge. Which is, it's still pre-60s, but that is an interesting one because it's set in the snow, but it's a really tense, really exciting film. Is it? I try to remember who directed it. And my brain, I know.
Andre Toth, is it?
Yes, that's the one. I couldn't think of his name on the tip of
Yeah,
the tongue.
I spotted it on your letterbox and saw that you'd given it a really high rating. I meant to watch it, but I ended up going down another route, so that's still one that I've got to catch up with.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I reviewed it quite a while ago, and yeah, that I was very impressed by that one. That's a good one. So yeah, I've gone through a lot of the old classics, but I don't know if Andy, if you want to, you've already mentioned your love of Naked Spur, but have you got any others you want to list, or anything else you want to say about the ones that I've listed?
Yeah, I'm just scanning down now, so I was ticking off as I went because you did steal a lot of mine there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I had.
It's like Guess Who, isn't it? Yeah.
There are a few that were different. Yeah, so but yeah, Budweiser, Kurtzgeld. Yeah, so John Ford. Let's go to John Ford. Yeah, I had Stagecoach Ford. Now I've got the searches on my list, but that was one that I actually came to quite late after I'd seen quite a lot of them. It was around the time when all the big like 70s directors were saying how wonderful it was. And I love The Searchers. I think it's a 5-star film, but it's just never been quite up there with some of his others for me. I mean, it's the same in a few John Ford films, but there's some weird little comedy bits that are that stick out a bit strangely. But it is really like, it's one that I need to watch several more times, I think, because it's really dense with themes of racism and things, isn't it? Which are really together. Yeah, and Manic at Liberty Valance that you mentioned is another of my favorite Fords. The three that you didn't mention that I really love. I love She Wore a Yellow Ribbon.
Oh yeah,
that's a really beautiful one, and it's also one of the films where John Wayne gives one of his best performances, I think, because there's that thing about it, John Wayne. I mean, where there's always debate whether he could act or not, and to me, it seems that he could when he chose to, or when he got an interest in. There's that old joke about John Wayne's two styles of acting, with or without a hat. but
I always like the story as well about, I think it was John Ford who said when he was making The Searchers, I never realised he could act. And I'm paraphrasing badly. Because it may well have been with swearing or something else. I can't quite remember. But yeah. And there was the other one as well about when he was in The Greatest Story Ever Told.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that anecdote.
No,
I don't know if it's true, but John Wayne had to say a line something like, "Truly, he is the Son of God."
Oh yeah.
And someone said it needs more awe, and he went, "Oh, truly, he is the Son of God." And then you get him in The Searchers, and it's like, my God, that performance, that character is just so incredible.
Yeah.
So how much of it was John Ford just pushing him in the right direction?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know it's outside of our remit, as you said earlier, but he is very good in The Shootist as well.
I was just about to bring that up because I actually reviewed that on the site just this week and watched it very recently. So yeah, I mean it's outside the remit, but at the same time it's because it was John Wayne's last film, and the way it plays out. I mean, it opens with clips from his earlier films, from his old black and white movies. It just feels, the whole film is like a eulogy to Wayne and to the kind of classic Western in a way. So it does kind of fit because it's kind of a goodbye to it, even though it was a little bit afterwards. But yeah, as I said, and he is fantastic in that. I guess it's especially powerful because he died just a couple of years after that, and he was suffering. He'd already had a lung removed during the prior to the shoot, like a year or so before the shoot. So he was struggling with his health. He couldn't shoot at high altitude. They actually had to change. They were going to shoot a lot of it on location, but he couldn't do it. So they had to do a lot of his stuff in the studio and shoot with like stand-ins and things like that for anything that required the kind of exteriors at higher altitude. But yeah, obviously knowing that he was suffering and knowing what he'd been through just adds that kind of extra poignancy to the film. And what I also find quite surprising about it is it's because it's directed by Don Siegel, and you think of Don Siegel, you think Dirty Harry and all this kind of stuff. You think of taut, action-packed, like tough guy sort of movies, but I mean, this is about a tough guy, but it's a really quite a moving, subtle, kind of well-handled drama. And yeah, I liked it a lot. But yeah, we're going off track though, I guess, because it doesn't quite fit. But I did want to mention it because obviously it fits with what we're talking about.
I thought talking about John Wayne would be a good way to just mention that as a bit of a sidebar. Other Ford ones that I mentioned, I've only seen it once on Target, but I did really love My Darling Clementine.
Yeah.
I've seen that many times.
Yeah, I
love
really
that
need
one.
to watch it again because it was such a good film. Sergeant Rutledge is a very unusual one that is not often seen, which I really enjoyed. And my favourite John Ford Western, and it was his favourite as well, is Wagon Master, which I've talked about on the show. It's such a really poetic, like, masterpiece of a film, and it's really unusual. It's quite a quiet Western. It's not as eventful as a lot of his others, but I think that it's just a great film. Moving on, I've got Howard Hawks. Yeah, Rio Bravo. Now, Howard Hawks is often seen as one of the great Western directors, but I'm not. He only made 6, and Rio Bravo is the only one that really stands out. The other one is Red River, but I remember being slightly put off by the strange ending of Red River, where like the whole build-up is sort of, they don't have a shootout, do they? They just are coaxed into admitting they love each other by the woman who's with them. I just remember I want to see it again because I remember it being like beautiful to look at, but that ending just sort of threw me a bit.
I've seen. I reviewed it for the site. I've only seen it that once though. I can remember liking it. I think I gave it quite a high score. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I can't quite remember enough of what happened in it now. It's a few years ago, but I do remember being quite impressed. But yeah, I don't think I gave it a proper 5-star like classic rating, but I did enjoy it.
Another one that I really loved. I saw it only a few years ago. It's interesting, actually. I forgot to mention when we were talking about our initial experiences with westerns. Is before I'd even seen a western, I heard the theme to this in it. It's so long ago because I was really young. I don't know. It was some sort of electronic shop, and you could test out headphones. And I put headphones on. This is what was playing. The music was playing on it, and it was so instantly rousing that I felt like I do when I watch a really great western, even though I'd never seen one before. And it's The Big Country. William Wyler's The Big Country.
Yeah,
it's got a fantastic theme. And I was so glad when I watched it that the film itself measured up as well to that.
I was about to say I still haven't seen it, but I do know the music. The instant you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, that's. When you were saying about the, I could actually. That was actually the theme I was thinking of when you were as you were leading up. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you knew where it was going. Yeah, you really. I mean, it's about 2.5 hours, so it's one of those where you'll need a good night to set aside that chunk of time. But I'm sure you'll have a blast with it.
It was on my list to watch the podcast, but I just never got around to it.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like I say, it's one like those nights when you suddenly find like your family are all going out and you've got the house just open. It's one of those kind of films to put on there. There's a few directors that I sort of breezed past that didn't make my favourites, but I want to mention Edward Dmytryk Warlock. I remember being a good film. And Michael Curtiz made some fun ones like Dodge City, and I really enjoyed The Proud Rebel and The Hangman. He's good. One of the ones I'm going to say, you're surprised you didn't mention it, David, but you mentioned so many. There's bound to be some that brief past, but Bad Day at Black Rock. John Sturge.
I guess in my mind, I always think of that as being set a little later, but it is really set. I did consider it actually, but I thought, I don't know if that fits, but yeah. I know what you mean. I guess when is it set? It's set. I guess it still counts though. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, there's certain ones that are like that. Like I'm never like people often count The Treasure of Sierra Madre, and I never really classed that as a western.
No.
I get what they mean, but it's not a western in the sense of what we mean.
No,
because it's starting to stretch the frontier a little bit thin, I think.
Yeah.
But Bad Day and Black Rock definitely has that kind of, in terms of the story, the kind of stranger coming into town, all this kind of stuff. It does definitely have that Western vibe. I think I was just thinking of the setting. Was it actually? Is it a period set film? I can't remember. Or was it just set in the time when it was made? I'm trying to remember.
That's a good question. I haven't seen it for a long time.
I saw it not too long ago, but I just can't quite remember. It's. I feel like it was modern-ish, but maybe it wasn't.
I think, yeah, I tend to think of it as, like you say, filmed when it's set in the time in which it was filmed.
Yeah.
I might be wrong though. It's a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, there's so many westerns. They'll start to blur, don't they? Just look down the last few I've got. Well, I got Death Street Rides Again, Acts by Incident, as you said. High Noon, Shane. The Gunfighter is one that I really like.
That was close to making the list. I tried to nail it down to 10. It just missed out.
Silver Load is a really interesting film. I rewatched that just the other night. Actually, that's by Alan Dwan. It's like a sort of B movie western, but it's heavily influenced by High Noon. Except it's when Heinlein tackled like McCarthyism. Silver Load is completely unsubtle about the fact that it's doing the same thing. The villain is actually called McCarthy in it. That's unsubtle it is about it, but it's a really good film.
Ooh, I've actually got that. I haven't got around to watching it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a really kind of efficient, those sort of scrappy B movies that are. Well, I say scrappy. It's really nicely directed actually, and it's one of those tight sort of. It's all in the town, and there's the kind of sort of intensity of it all being in one setting.
Yeah, I found this Alan Dwan DVD set. I think it's like a French set or something. I can't remember how I found it. I came across it somewhere and picked it up, but it's in there. Cool.
Yeah, definitely get around to watching that. The last couple I've got are Rawhide, Henry Hathaway's Rawhide. I watched that a few years ago and was really, really impressed by it. And the other one is getting a bit sort of borderline revisionist kind of sort of time now, but Hood is one that I really love as well.
That's another one I haven't got around to yet. It was on my list. There's a few classics I haven't quite got around to yet. That I've bought and just they're in the pile.
Oh, and also I was just going to throw in with apologies to John because it's a musical, and apologies to everyone because it is completely on PC. But I really do love Annie Get Your Gun.
Okay, I haven't seen it, I must admit.
You're talking about musical westerns. We'll get into Paint Your Wagon, which I think is thankfully just outside of our remit today.
That's one I've never seen actually.
Oh, it's one of those. You should watch it just as a drinking game.
For all the duff notes, I think.
Yes, exactly.
The game is drinking game is can you get through it without drinking?
Yeah, a bit like Rod Stewart's performance at Glastonbury. So far, you guys, you've picked a lot that I was going to talk about.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'm still going to talk about them.
Yeah.
But you've not mentioned some key ones. So I'm sat here going, they're going to mention it, and you don't. So that's great. The first one that I was going to pick out was Henry Fonda in Drums Along the Mohawk, which is a John Ford. And it's interesting because he's late 30s, 39, I think, but it's colour. And it's got a really, really striking scene in it. In the film itself, especially with Henry Fonda, who's a marvellous actor, but he's quite dumb in this one. He's very middle of the road, a little bit sentimental. But there is a scene where a homestead is attacked by Native Americans, and one of them gets into the bedroom of the grandma, and she's just sat up in bed screaming when this guy comes into the room. And of course, he's bare-chested and he's got a flaming torch in his hand. And he just calmly looks at her and then sets fire to the room before leaving again.
Jeez.
And it's such a striking image that if it's not one that you've seen, I recommend it just for that.
I
It
saw it
really
years
sticks out,
ago. I can't
especially in
remember.
colour, you know. And then, of course, you've spoken about the Searchers, and that's definitely one of my favourites as well. And I can really recommend. There's a making of book called "Making of a Legend," and it's really interesting because rather than just telling you about how the film was made, the first half of the book is about where the story came from, about the kidnap stories, which were it was a really, really common thing back in the um, early colonial days, because it was the way that the Native Americans had a way of fighting back, is that they would sneak in and steal the kids, and some of those kids would end up growing up within the reservations, never to be seen again by their white families. And it's the stories are just so shocking, where you can see why they were called savages, but at the same time you can understand that it was just their way of life was so different to the pilgrims who came in. Um, and it goes into all the where the government start culling the buffalo to take the lands away from them, and it gets quite deep and complicated, but it is fascinating. And the backdrop for the film, and seeing how sympathetic the film was to both sides, is really insightful. So I can highly recommend that.
Cool.
Um, Talked about Rio Bravo as well before, but for Howard Hawks, one of my favourite westerns is of anyone is Red River, with a slightly older John Wayne. I say slightly older; it was 1948. I think he just plays older, as he was doing around that time with the Cavalry trilogy as well. And I really love that film, just the look of it as well. I think Howard Hawks was more of a businessman than a film director, a bit like Howard Hughes in some ways. But although he takes a, a, a kind of constructed approach to his films, sometimes they really pay off, like with Rio Bravo and especially with Red River. I love that one. Then we come to Anthony Mann, and we've talked a lot about his, and I'm really glad that we've given him space on this, because people seem to forget him and
Yes.
forget his contributions. And actually, he did a lot more than just be a third wheel in the Western genre. It was his stuff was really, really important, I think. Um, which one was I going to pick out? Yeah, the one that you haven't mentioned, not directed by any of these guys, is 310 to Yuma,
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That was close to
which
making my
is
list.
which is that I think is one of my favourite films overall.
Wow.
It's so short and so beautifully written. The ending is perfect as well. And I stress that because much as I love James Mangold's films, and he remade 310 to Yuma, and I liked his version, I remember seeing an interview with him where he basically said the only thing wrong with the original was the ending, because they pulled the punch. And I'm like, no,
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 it's not, is it? No.
I do not agree
Mm.
in any way. I get it because they kind of um, look at the story again from an angle of Catholic guilt,
Mm.
and so it has to have a different ending. Fair enough. You go make your film, James. I'll stick with the original. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, because it's almost like a High Noon again. Um, but it was directed by Delmer Daves, and I can't think of anything else that he's done that sticks out to me. But yeah, I really love that film, featuring Glenn Fordwell, of course, who I think of all the Western actors, he was genuinely the fastest gun. There was some trivia I read years ago that apparently he was the one who could actually do a draw faster than any of the others. So that's a thing for him. You know, it just adds a little bit to the authenticity, I think. And then what I wanted to mention as well was, I think we always forget to speak about women in westerns. So I just want to make a special mention for Johnny Guitar,
Oh yeah.
for
Yes.
Joan Crawford. Not seen it for a very long time. Bit melodramatic, pretty much like most of what Joan Crawford did, bless her. But I do like that film. And then, of course, we've got The Outlaw with Jane Russell, which was a Howard Hughes one back in the days, which in some ways isn't a great film, but is notable for the efforts that Howard Hughes had to go to get that film past the censors. So it stands out for that reason as well, I think.
Didn't that one have a poster that had like something like, "What are the two things that make Jane Russell famous?" And it was plastered
Yeah.
across the cleavage.
Yeah. Yes, it did. They talk about it in The Aviator as well,
Oh yeah.
where he's literally in front of the censors with diagrams of bra sizes, asking them to tell him where's the line, where can I go to, you know. So yeah, can you guys think of any other? I think from this period, women I don't think got a fair go at the
Yeah,
genre at all. But
my mum was telling me, my mum who hated westerns, and this might be part of the reason. She said when she used to go and see them with my dad at the cinema, and it was just full of men, and when a woman came on the screen, they used to boo.
Really?
Yeah,
wow,
which is bizarre. But I mean, it's hard to think of many that foreground women. There's one that I really wanted to watch for this. I didn't get around to it yet, but I'm going to watch it. I think it might have been another Alan Dwan one. It's called a woman they almost lynched. Is it called? Or just look at, yeah, woman they almost lynched. Alan Dwan, yeah, and that's supposed to be a very good film. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, there are some great performances by women in westerns, but they don't tend to get their due. I mean, I really like Shelley Winters in Winchester 73.
yeah.
Well, there's we mentioned we both had Destry Ride Again on our list, and
Yes,
yeah,
of
Marlene
course.
Dietrich has obviously got a definite central role in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's fantastic in that.
Yes, of course.
And trying to think of others that stand out. Angie Dickinson in Rio Bravo is one that jumps to mind.
And yeah, did you mention Grace Kelly in High Noon? I mean, she's
Yeah.
she's strong. But again, yeah, she's still maybe. Well, I don't. She does have a pretty pivotal role in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking down. I had a few others listed, but no, like nothing that stands out as. I mean, I do really like The Professionals. That's a good 60s western.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always think of that as later, but no, it is the 60s.
Yeah,
That is a good fun one. I saw that for the first time quite recently. Yeah, I had a lot of fun
Ye-
with that.
yeah, the more sort of fun ones. I saw a little known one called Gunman's Walk a few
Oh, yeah.
months ago, which is really good. Night Passage I quite enjoyed, which was supposed to be the sixth James Stewart and Anthony Mann Western, but they fell out over the script because Anthony Mann thought it was terrible. And so James Stewart went off and made it without him. It's certainly not up to that standard, but it is quite good fun. And Shenandoah. Now that is
Oh yes, I'd forgotten about that one.
it's
Thank you for mentioning that one. Yeah,
well, that mainly for me stands out because of James Stewart's performance, because he gives such a classic sort of big performance. He really like holds the screen. So that was one that stuck in my head for that. And I guess we should mention True Grit as well. No one's mentioned that one, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
obviously what John Wayne won his Oscar for. He's fun in it. It's not one of his best performances, I don't think, but he's a lot of fun. He's quite sort of self-parody and in it.
see, I didn't mention True Grit because it was pushing in 1969.
Yeah,
You know,
about as far down as
yeah,
a remit as you
yeah.
can get. Yeah.
And also, to be fair, I love the remake from the
Yes.
Coens.
Yes, the remake.
Which,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just a fabulous film.
Excellent. Cool.
I
Yeah.
think the last one that I was going to pick up on was, and in fact has a strong female role in it as well, with Barbara Stanwyck, is in a film called 40 Guns.
I've never seen
Oh,
this.
I have seen that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
liked it. I was a little disappointed by it. I think I just had high expectations for it. It's one I want to rewatch. I don't know.
yeah,
I wasn't a
it's
huge fan of that one.
that's what I was going to say, is that I think it was very much a studio film,
Hmm.
and it doesn't feel as extraordinary as perhaps it could be. But for some reason, I've gone back to it a couple of times, and there's 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 moments in it. It's a film of moments, and I think for the fact that it gives Barbara Stanwyck quite a lot to do, that she's a really strong character in it. Maybe it's that that's helping it stand out from, just as we were saying, that women don't get much of a good deal with the genre in the early years. I think she did well to stand her ground in that one. It's a very strong character for her.
Should we? As I say, I mean, as we've proved there, there's so many, and there's so many other good westerns we haven't even mentioned. I guess these are just some of the top tier ones, but it's a genre that's just bursting at the seams. And this is just the pre-60s stuff. There's some fantastic films that came later on, and the spaghetti westerns, which, I mean, I guess speaking of love of westerns, I mean, several of my favorite films of all time are westerns, but they're this of the spaghetti variety, or Euro westerns or whatever. But we can get into those on another episode. But yeah, there's just so many treats, and as I say, there's still a lot I haven't seen. I was making a list of things to watch for this podcast, and there's loads of classics that I've not watched. Another big one that none of us have mentioned, although is that I'm trying to think. No, it's not 70s. Is the Magnificent Seven? Obviously,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
popular.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of it, but I thought, no, it just tips into outside the period.
Does it?
I
Yeah.
thought there was but I might be splitting hairs,
I think
but
the
And
issue
it's
with that is
like,
always the overshadowing of Seven Samurai, but it's still a great film.
yeah,
yeah.
Although I've not seen it
Well,
for a long time either. That's why I didn't have it on the list really.
I mean, like you were saying, David, there's loads of westerns that reuse the same plot and yet are distinct films. And I think
Yeah, yeah,
I could watch The Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven back to back and feel like I'd seen
yeah.
different
Absolutely
enough interpretations of it.
I
cool.
always like what Kurosawa actually said. He said, "The Magnificent Seven is a great film, but it is my film," or something like that. But I've always liked that about the fact that Kurosawa was a bit of an outlier in his own country because he was so influenced by Western cinema. And he kind of took those influences, created his samurai films, did The Seven Samurai, which of course Hollywood immediately remade more closely. And then, of course, they remade a couple of his other films as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it all kind of feeds its own tail. And it's just as the genre seems to be dying, it gets a kick from an outside source, like Kurosawa, like Sergio Leone later on.
Well, should we just realizing time is ticking on. Let's dig into some watches that we've done for the podcast. Then I've got three that I've watched. I might skim over the first one a little bit because it's been mentioned already, and I watched it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm starting to get a little hazy on it already. But yeah, the first one that I watched, and to be honest, this is why I chose westerns as a podcast, because I watched this, and then like the next morning I realized, oh, I could probably squeeze a podcast in somewhere, and that is Naked Sperm.
Yes.
So yeah, this, I think it's the last of the Anthony Mann and James Stewart ones that I haven't watched yet. I think I might be wrong. I might have been missing another one. So I'd been looking forward to watching it for a long while. And yeah, it tells the story. So Jimmy Stewart is what's his name on here? Let's have a little look. He plays Howard Kemp. So he's a guy he's a bounty hunter, and he's been looking for a guy called Ben Vandergroat, sorry, for a long time. And but along the way, he kind of becomes he's just as he's catching up to the guy, he's forced to kind of take on a couple of partners. So there's kind of an old prospector guy, Jesse Tate. So he's played by I'm just finding the names now. Millard Mitchell. and who's the other guy? And then a dishonorably discharged Union soldier called Roy Anderson, who's played by Ralph Meeker, and they end up catching Ben, who's played by Robert Ryan, and also along with his girlfriend or partner, whatever, called Lena, who's played by the great Janet Leigh. And the film goes on from there as Jimmy Stewart and his gang try to take Ben back to get the reward and to kind of take him to justice. But it's not as simple as that, because as Robert Ryan keeps reminding everyone, is there's a lot of money on his head. And he kind of stirs the pot wonderfully. I love Ryan in this film. In fact, he's really good at kind of stirring the pot between these other guys to kind of turn them against each other so that they can get all the reward money to themselves. And so it's really, although it's set out in the open and you get some wonderful kind of it's a beautiful looking film, wonderful kind of landscape shots. It's really a chamber piece. It's just, you've just got these 5 people playing off each other, and it just works an absolute treat in that way. I mean, I don't know if we mentioned, I think I briefly mentioned this earlier, but one of the things I like about especially some of the stronger westerns is, in fact, they kind of sparked there's a kind of a subgenre that people use of psychological westerns. Where it's films like these where it really plays on the psychology of the characters rather than just focusing on shoot 'em ups and stuff like that from some of the earlier westerns. And this is a great example of it. Really, it works an absolute treat. Yeah, so I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, I mean, Andy, you mentioned before it's one of your all-time favorites. So.
Yeah, I think I usually say that's my favorite western.
Wow. Nice, but yeah, yeah, it's hard to disagree. I absolutely loved it. And then I also did another. So that was a kind of, as I say, this is one I keep meaning to watch, and I finally ticked it off. And now I turn to another one that I really want to tick off, and that is 7 Men from Now. So
yeah, another cracker.
Yeah, so this was another one of the Renown westerns, I guess they call them. The films that Bud Bettiker did, the westerns, sorry, that Bud Bettiker did with Randolph Scott. And this wasn't in the box set that indicated dud, because it's been released by another company. So yeah, I finally caught it with that one. And yeah, I loved it. This is actually the first of the films they did together. And I must admit, I'd forgotten because it's been a while since I've seen the other ones. But watching the extra features, supposedly, I think Bud Bettiker and is the writer of all these, of most of these westerns, Burt Kennedy. I think supposedly the idea is 7 Men. They made 7 Men from Now, and on the other westerns, they kind of roughly recycled the same kind of storyline, but it kind of shifted it around a bit, changed it up. But on a kind of a loose scale, they kind of recycled this. So it's quite interesting to go back to the source. So yeah, in the film, so Randolph Scott is playing Ben Stride. He's a former sheriff. He kind of blames himself for his wife's death during a bank robbery, and he vows to track down and kill the 7 men responsible. Randolph Scott bumps into a couple played by Gail Russell, and I think it's Walter Reed, but I might be wrong. And it kind of reluctantly kind of has them tag along with him as they're kind of going in the same direction, and there's trouble around. There's some Native Americans around causing the Cherokee stirring up trouble. And yeah, he heads off to try and find the rest of the 7, because he kills 2 of them right at the start of the film, and so he's got 5 left. But then along the way they bump into Lee Marvin and his buddy, I think it's played by John Larch, and that's where things again kind of get interesting. So again, we've got Lee Marvin stirring things up now. And I must admit, he was the real star of the show in this one. I mean, I do like Lee Marvin anyway, but he is absolutely brilliant in this film. Yeah, he's just he's charismatic but also really nasty, and like you say, similar to A Naked Spirit, really kind of plays on the interplay between these characters. There's a lot of suggestion. There's a lot of stuff done in a lot of things unsaid but clearly implied in conversations. There's some fantastic conversations in this film, which sounds like a boring thing to say about a Western, but they're so good. There's so much suggestion and tension, especially when Lee Marvin gets involved, which is most of the time. And yeah, it's just, it's I loved it, absolutely loved it. And it still throws in some action towards the end, although it's another psychological Western. You do get the action picking up in the final act. There's a nice build to it. A kind of exciting final act, showdown in the kind of rocky mountains, and another one that was just spot on, and I was glad to have finally watched it. And I'm dragging on too long on this, but I'm going to briefly mention the third film. I snuck in a third one. I had an evening where I was going to watch a review film, but it was running late, and I was like, I can't fit in a 2-hour Japanese brutal kind of drama. I'm going to watch a Western, so I stuck on Jewel at Silver Creek, which is an early-ish one by Don Siegel, it's got Audie Murphy in it. And yeah, this is a real... It sets it up as a revenge Western. So Audie Murphy's dad gets shot by these... There's a gang, a gang who are going around taking over people's gold plots of land, the gold mines and things, by basically just either strong arming them or most of the time just shooting them and stealing the deeds. Like they'll force them at gunpoint to give them the deeds, then just kill them and take it. And this gang do it to Audie Murphy's dad. So he goes out to get revenge, but weirdly the film, it shifts leads to Stephen McNally, and he kind of becomes the lead after this, even though Audie Murphy I think gets top billing. And Stephen McNally is like the Marshal Lightning Tyrone, which is a really cool name. And it's almost like Max Power from The Simpsons or something. It's like, sounds made up. Actually, there's loads of great names in this film. There's also a character called Johnny Sombrero, who's like rather camp, but he's supposed to be quite tough and mean. It doesn't quite work. But yeah, so it basically kind of the Marshal takes over, but they do meet up. So the Marshal kind of takes Audie Murphy, who plays the Silver Kid, under his wing, and they go off to try and stop this gang. And yeah, it's I enjoyed it, but it's a very, very, very generic kind of Western. There wasn't much else to mine from it other than just a fun kind of all guns blazing kind of romp. But it's well paced. Like it's short, so I guess it's easy to be short paced when it's only 77 minutes long. But it just barrels along. There's loads of gunfights. There's some cool kind of horse stunts and things in there. It was just a solid film, but certainly not to the level of the other two that I watched for the show. But it was fun. So yeah, John, I guess I'll jump to you next. What have you watched for the show, or have you got anything to say about the ones that I've mentioned?
No. You picked out a couple that I haven't seen.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that's they're going on my list. I typically going straight down the middle, stick with what I know. Went back to My Darling Clementine.
Oh, lovely.
But the part of the reason is, I think it could be Ford's finest film. I think, and the reason I say that is the Searchers was much grander, more important, you might say. But it has a couple of scenes where, for instance, I can't remember the guy's name now, so I'm getting David's problem. But when they keep going back home, there's the guy with the hee-haw voice, and he's like, when people watch The Searcher for the first time, I think they're often put off by him. And there's that angle of sentimental melodrama that Ford, for all his bluster and for all his ferocity apparently on set, you could tell he was a bit of a softie, and he sometimes lets that through. And I think in My Darling Clementine, that's where he got the balance just right, where you've got a real sense that these are actual lives of people trying to make something of themselves. but getting interrupted by violence. And I think Henry Fonda's performance is one of his best in that
Yeah.
film, because again he embodies that wide-eyed innocence, but also that steely resolve
Yeah.
of being able to put something right. And it wouldn't be until Once Upon a Time in the West where they really leaned into Henry Fonda's potential to be a villain. But he always had this way of walking a line, and I don't think he's walked it quite so carefully outside of My Darling Clementine. And weirdly, one of the best scenes in it is a dance,
Yeah.
and it really, really stands out. Historically, accuracy, etc. Is not the film. It's not there. It's completely wrong as far as the Wyatt Earp is concerned. Then again, I think maybe it does capture the character of what we understand the man to have been. Because again, it leans into these are normal people. They're trying to build something. And it always fascinates me when you look at the timeline of Westerns, because of course this is the Wild West, the way out west on the borders. But meanwhile, New York, for instance, was becoming a bit of it was an established city in not necessarily at this time, but the timelines of Chicago and New York, etc., overlap quite a lot, where it's still the ranch hands and the cowboys out on the western frontier. And so you forget that these people that you're seeing in these films are they may have a history of being gentlemen in Europe, or at least from that line of their family is there may be at least second or third born from people who were in London and in other parts of Europe. So I think it's clearer in My Darling Clementine more than any others about what they've lost to attempt to build this new life and to deal with these new challenges where law and order is breaking down, but they're still going to try and have a dance in the middle of it, you know. Um, I like Victor Mature's performance of Doc Holliday in it, though again, I don't think he's not a patch on Dennis Quaid, who did the one in the Kevin Costner version. But just as a whole, you've got a balance of you've got all the landscapes, you've got all the ingredients that make up a John Ford film. You've got the sentimental stuff before it became a little bit too melodramatic. You've got the theme song before that just became a thing by the mid to late 50s and the 60s. Everything had to have a theme song. So it's just a film I find myself going back to time and time again. And I really, really love it dearly. Um, the other one that I was going to pick out was the Oxbow incident, which
Yeah.
we touched on earlier on. But I'm always fascinated by that because it couldn't be more of the opposite of the sentimental side of something like Clementine, because it's such a dark film and quite grim in places as well. But as a screenplay goes as well, it's really, really finely tuned. Um, So yeah, I think there's not much out that more that I want to say about Oxbow incidents, other than if you haven't seen it, it's one you really should look up, even if you don't think you like westerns. It's worth looking at from a screenplay perspective, from the performances. Yeah, it's an incredible little chamber piece almost
Yeah, I was gonna say
in
it's
a
another.
campsite.
Yeah, it's another kind of minimalist location. Just kind of keeps it small.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
and some of the
yeah.
I do. I am quite partial to those when they work. They can be really fantastic, really gripping. And that was one of my favorites. I'd say it made my list. Fantastic film.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And so, Andy, what did you have on your list
Uh,
that you watched recently? Then
all right. Well,
this is the bit of the podcast where he's normally watched about 17.
Yeah.
I'll do a quick count. uh,
Oh dear.
10. 10. I
Oh
watched
wow.
10. But I'm not going to talk about more. Well, I thought about them. I thought rather than like razor focus on one of them, I would sort of give a broad overview because I picked out two directors who are associated with the Western and films that I hadn't seen and thought I'll familiarize myself a bit more with them. Unfortunately, no one's mentioned either the directors or any of the films. So one of them was Raoul Walsh.
Oh yes.
He made a
Okay,
lot.
yeah.
He was probably better known for his gangster films and like White Heat and The Roaring Twenties and High Sierra, and he also made one of my favorite silent films, The Thief of Baghdad. But yeah, he made lots of westerns. I watched first one I watched was The Big Trail, which is from 1930, and this was back when they were trying to do big, sprawling sort of epic westerns, and it was the first starring role for John Wayne, and it flopped so badly that John Wayne just was pushed back into B westerns for years to come until he made Stagecoach nearly a decade later. Uh, you can see how it was a big sort of event film, but it just never quite caught on, and it's I was torn on it because the splendor of it, it's shot in like just this glorious widescreen, and it's all like wagon trains and cattle drives and stuff, beautiful to look at, but there's the story just isn't there. It's just quite dull. So it's an important western, but it wasn't one of the better ones. I also watched one called Along the Great Divide, which I quite enjoyed. It was a solid kind of escorting the prisoner to jail kind of a western, but it was a I won't waste too much time on that because it's a good night's viewing basically, but nothing special. One that stuck out, not necessarily for being a brilliant film, but for being really unusual, was one from 1932 called Wild Girl, and that title kind of oversells it. She wore trousers. That was what made it. Although she just gave for a pre-code skinny dip, which is I suppose fits in with it. But it's such a strange film. It's for a lot of it, it's almost like a spoof. I think it's supposed to be sort of a bit of a parody of melodramatic westerns, and for that period of the film, it is really good fun. But then it kind of it commits to the melodramatic bits, and it just sort of by the end it's just drifted off into actual melodrama. But it's got all sorts of unusual wrinkles. It opens with all the members of the cast looking. Well, it opens with the picture of a photo album, and the photo album opens, and each page has a picture of the cast member, and they look straight into the camera and they say something about their character. Uh, and it's kind of corny, but it's funny. Like, I think the main character in it, she says, "I like trees better than men. They're straight." And then as you go into it, so like each scene transitions with like a sort of wipe that looks like a page turning, and that continues through the whole film. So it's supposed to be like presented in this album. So it was a really interesting watch. It wasn't, like I say, not a great film, but worth it. But I dug down to the Raoul Walsh Gold, which is Pursued. Pursued stars Robert Mitchum, and it's like a sort of noir western about a boy who sees his whole family killed, and from then on he forever feels like there's something or someone pursuing him wherever he goes. It was a really, really good film. Uh, so yeah, that's definitely worth checking out.
Ooh,
But
I'm
what?
glad you say that. That was on my list. I picked it up. I think I picked it up in France randomly on Blu-ray. I was like, oh, that was cool. Yeah, that's Oh, I should have watched that. That was
Oh yeah, well, God, yeah, I recommend you definitely watch that one. But what sort of there's loads more Raoul Walsh ones, and I was gonna get around to them. But what threw me off was that I watched a Jacques Tourneur western,
nice.
and I thought it was so good that I ended up watching all 6 of his westerns. uh, Now, obviously, Jack Tourneur is probably more associated with horror. He made like Cat People, and I worked with a zombie in Night of the Demon. He also did noir as well because he made Out of the Past, one of the great noirs, as we established last time. Oh no, it wasn't last time. That was Silence, and wasn't it? I'm getting but yeah, but his westerns not terribly well known, but so there's a couple of them. Way of a Gaucho, which is a western. It's shot and set in Argentina, which was a bit sort of full-blooded and melodramatic for me. I was not so keen on that one, and there was a really strange sort of Civil War kind of era western called Great Day in the Morning, which I didn't really like at all. But the other 4 are some of the best westerns I've ever seen.
Wow.
I was so impressed by them. So there's one of them which is a bit of an outline because it's technically a southern, not a western, but and it was but it has all the sort of iconography of the western looking town and the like, cowboy hats and things, but it's more similar in sort of vibe to those sort of small town films. Like it has a sort of To Kill a Mockingbird feel to it, almost. It's called Stars in My Crown, and it's one of 3 that starred Joel McCrea. And it's unusual because I absolutely loved it, but it is highly religious, which it doesn't really chime with the sort of thing I normally watch. But it's the sort of film where it's not a happy ending unless everyone goes to church in the last scene. And like, he's trying to. There's like an atheist doctor who he's trying to reform all the way. So in fact, one of the early scenes, which feels the most Western, is Joel McCrea is the new preacher in town, and he walks into this saloon. He says to all the men there, "I'm the new preacher in town. I'm going to give my first sermon now." And he opens the Bible, and they all just burst out laughing at him. And he just pulls 2 guns out and points them at it, and they all shut up and they have to stand there and listen to this sermon.
I was gonna say the description. Sorry, jumping in there. I'm looking it up. The description on IMDb makes it because it mentions that it makes it sound like it. What's that film with Gerard Butler and he's like, was it Preacher with a Machine Gun or something? Sounds a bit like that. But anyway,
Yeah,
carry on.
It doesn't go down that track. So the other, what was that great name character name you mentioned earlier? Lightning.
Oh yeah, Lightning. Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Stars in My Crown. I think trumps it because it has a character called Chloroform Wiggins. So yeah, I really enjoyed Stars in My Crown. I thought it was a great film. And then I watched one called Wichita, which again stars Joel McCrea, and it's one of the many Wyatt Earp films that are out there. And this was just brilliant. It was such a great film. So it's about Wyatt Earp coming to the town of Wichita, and it's all these cowboys arrive. So it's quite sort of quiet town, but so occasionally these cowboys ride into it, and they just have like a wild night. They get off their faces and they ride around shooting, and all the inhabitants just hole up in their houses and pray for it to be over. And so White Earp they want him to be the new sheriff, and he's resisting it all the way through. And then these cowboys come and they end up accidentally killing a child, and that makes him take on the law, and he becomes the sheriff, and he introduces a rule where you can't have guns in the town anymore, which obviously doesn't go down well with a lot of people. So it's one of those kind of taming the town kind of westerns. It's really good. The only downside to it is one of the main emotional beats of it, through no fault of the filmmakers at all, is now been undermined, because there's a moment where someone says to Wyatt Earp, "Oh, I didn't realize someone was killed last night," and he says, "Yes, a 5-year-old boy called Michael Jackson." I thought if you show that in a theatre now, that's going to be a big laugh at the main
That's brutal, yeah.
at the worst possible time. Yeah. The other interesting thing about Wichita I found out was that, as far as I can find from research, is the only time this award has been given. It won the Golden Globe for Best Outdoor Drama, which is one that I've never heard of. But the last two were probably my favourite. So there's one called Canyon Passage.
Oh, yeah.
Now this is a very unusual western. It was Jacques Tourneu's first film in Technicolor, and he has just gone to town with it. It's so beautiful to look at. It's lavish, and I need to see it again. I mean, I gave this one 5 stars. I was so taken with it, but I still haven't quite picked my way through it because it's set in just like this community, and it's so dense with subplots, and there's so much going on. It moves at kind of a slower pace than you'd expect. A lot of people get kind of ticked off with it because it takes its time, but there's so many characters and so much going on, and it's so beautifully shot and unusually written. I was so taken with it. So I love that one. But then the other one I then watched and loved almost as much. It's called Stranger on Horseback, and that is the opposite. It is not dense or complex at all. It is a barely, like, just over an hour long kind of B movie style western about a guy who rides into a town which is being held in thrall to a gang of bullies and basically takes them on. And it's just that perfect basic plot. Here's the bad guys. Here's the guy who's going to sort it out. Off you go. And I watched it. I watched it one morning when I was working out on the treadmill, and I just it was so good that I forgot that I was exercising.
10K as well.
So I highly recommend seeking out some of Jacques Tourneu's westerns, because he's quickly become one of my favorite western directors over this week.
It sounds like we need some of the labels. Hopefully someone's listening to get a Jacques Tourneur western box set out. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I have picked up Canyon Passage. Actually, I have that on. I bought 3 of these. I don't know how I came across them. In Germany, they keep doing these 9 movie Blu-ray box sets where they're not great quality because they kind of cram 3 films on each disc, sort of thing. But I've got 3 of these 9 film sets with loads of westerns on, and one of them does have Canyon Passage in there. So it's and I think there is a company that has put it out in the UK as well. One of these smaller labels. I can't remember the name. So because I've heard of this one before. I'd been seeking it out. So yeah, I'm glad to see it's worth watching. I'll again, another one to add to the never-ending list. Well, yeah, as we mentioned before, just a never-ending flow of fantastic movies, really. I mean, there's some, they're not all perfect. There are some bad westerns out there, but I think it's one of those genres, a bit like martial arts movies, where even if it's not a great western, I think as long as it kind of hits the tropes, I still kind of enjoy it. I
think I still watch the western, and that's been a good evening.
Absolutely, excellent. Well, yeah, I guess that's it for us now. As always, we've gone way over my 1 hour limit, which I didn't even bother trying to suggest we get to today. But no, it's been a pleasure. I mean, has anyone got anything they want to plug? Anything they've written on the site or elsewhere that you want to talk about? I know, Andy, you've always got your awesome lists being posted on the site. Do you want to mention any of those that you've put up recently?
Yeah, I mean, most recent ones, I've been working on a series of articles about Ealing. I did my first one, which was watching all of the Ealing comedies and ranking them.
Yeah, you put the lady killers in the wrong place.
That's right. I remember last time.
I thought it was going to happen, and it did, and I'm not over it. But carry on.
It did. When we talked last, and you said that, I was thinking it was going to come third. I thought Kind Hearts and Carrots was going to beat it, but having watched it again, I thought no, that is The Lady Killers is a almost perfect film. And then just recently it's a lot more niche, but I dug back into the earlier years of Ealing and the other sort of set of Ealing comedies, which was their star vehicles for the music hall performers. So that's Gracie Fields, George Formby, Tommy Trinder, and Will Hay. And there's some really good films in there. I know that they're kind of neglected now and seen as kind of a bit dated, but I really enjoyed putting that together. I'm going to do a third article as well. I think I'm going to watch a lot of because you say Ealing and people just think comedy straight away, but there's some fantastic Ealing dramas. So I'm going to try and rather than try and watch them all and rank them, I'm going to try and define what, if you had a set of like 18 Ealing dramas, like you do the 18 Ealing comedies, what would be the definitive 18 Ealing dramas?
Well, I have been reviewing all sorts of discs as usual. I kind of mentioned, I guess recently I've put up the review of The Shooters, so obviously that's I mentioned that already, but that's obviously fits nicely into what we're talking about. So yeah, definitely check that review out. And it won't be up yet, but I'm at the moment I've been working through Third Window's Takashi Ishii box set, so Four Tales of Nami. It's not out for a while, but they sent the discs early, and I was waiting for some other discs to arrive, so I've just plunged into that. I'm halfway through, and they're very impressive films. They're bleak as hell. They're not a lot of fun, but wow, what I'd heard of the director. I think I've seen one of his films before, but they're very, very impressive films. But yeah, they're pretty tough. But yeah, look out for that review. It'll probably be up maybe in a week or so. When I kind of battle through the next couple. and write something up. But yeah, that's me. John, have you got anything up on the site at the moment?
Not at the moment. I'm behind on 24/7, but that should be up this week. And yeah, I mean, you speak of bleak, but it's still a wonderful film.
Yeah.
And still, it's from my local area to some degree, so it's I won't say fun to see, but it's not. But it's still a great film.
He's got a new one coming out as well, hasn't he? Soon.
He has, yeah.
Film again.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And somehow I do need to tackle the human traffic problem. So yeah, wish me luck.
Hopefully the special features are worth watching.
Yes.
I want to see if you rank it higher than Mildred Pierce.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, Mildred Pierce just it slides by on, just it's a quality film, even if the result isn't great.
Yeah,
in my opinion. But human traffic it's got problems from the start.
I guess the difference between fade in Joan Crawford and fade in Danny Dyer are immediately apparent.
I like that because you said fading Joan Crawford, fade in Danny Dyer. Brilliant.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. I should let you guys get some sleep. It's quite late when we're recording this.
Yeah, I guess we should ride off into the sunset now.
Yes, yeah, I forgot about the analogies. Let's get that back in. Damn it. Great. Well, yeah, a pleasure as always. Hopefully you'll be back for whatever theme I come up with next time. It'll probably be a couple of months away because I'm absolutely swamped with screeners over summer, and I'm away for a couple of weeks and things like that as well. So it won't be any time too soon. But
that'll give the listeners a chance to watch every film we've mentioned on this.
Yeah. So hopefully September or definitely by October, we should hopefully be get back in the saddle. Yeah, I got one more in there.
Hey.
So yeah, thanks again, guys, and yeah, I'll see you later.
Yeah, see you
Thanks,
soon.
bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.